What's going on, guys? This is Mark here with Anastacio, bringing you guys a video on single stick, and this is what I believe the first 5 strikes that you need to know in Filipino martial arts. Now, the names might be different depending if you've seen other videos or you follow other Filipino martial artists, or even if you train by yourself, but generally they kind of follow the same lines. So let's start with number 1. This is the be-all and end-all of when you start Filipino martial arts, and this is what we call the angle 1. So we categorize this as a forehand slash because it's on my right side, and it's a diagonal slash that goes from top right down to bottom left. So in this relative fashion, when you start to learn it for the first time, it's a slash going through the target, which requires your body to rotate here. So angle 1 is kind of our beginner angle, and it's something that is a staple in Filipino martial arts. But what you can also use with the angle 1 is you can turn it into different kinds of applications. For instance, you combine it with any set of footwork, you can get what we call offline angle 1s, which usually follows some principles. If you guys watched the last video, you can figure out more about how you can apply that angle 1 in different ways. You can take it even a step further. We go into what we call a trapilon, which follows an angle 1, but has a little tick or whipping motion to it and counts as a double strike. So rather than just the angle 1 here, you have a nice whipping strike into the trapilon that still follows that same motion. And of course you have, your fluid angle 1, but most importantly you can also load it up. So if we do what we call an open position in Anastacio, load up the hip, load up the shoulder, drive it through, you can get a dramatically more effective strike depending if power is your goal. So number 2, since we have a forehand strike, we're going to follow up with the backhand strike. Now we could go with an angle 2, which would be the mirror version of angle 1, but to mix it up is very, very important. So we're going with what we call an angle 4. So that is a backhand horizontal strike. It is also a slash that cuts through around the floating rib section. And most importantly about this is that it changes the angle. So a lot of the times we'll do follow-up strikes. Whether it's a slash to a slash, whether it's a slash to a snap, so on and so forth. And generally, you follow forehand, backhand, just due to the nature of your strikes. So as we change the line to a horizontal line, we can now offer, again, snapping strikes, where personally I feel like this is my strongest snap, a forehand snap. I'm not too comfortable with it, or not, I shouldn't say comfortable. It's not my go-to move, and I think that when we look at 5 essential strikes, and these are the ones that you should develop, it should be off of your strengths first, and once you've established that, then you can refine it and work on your weaknesses. So at least in my upbringing, this angle 4 here was one of my strongest moves, very, very sharp. If I miss with that angle 1 and my opponent's coming in range, I could check them and retain my weapon very, very quickly. Right? If it was a closer range, you can also take that angle 4, change it to a puño strike, and now I can go a little bit more close range with that same typical angle that we would get from 4, just a little heightened. We call this the high line. Right? So when you guys are doing an angle 4, you can drive it forward and slash. Right? You can snap it, or you can snap it with the puño side or the close range. So that's number 2. We're moving to number 3. Now we're going to go back to the forehand side, but now let's change the direction. Remember, in angle 1, we're going top right down to bottom left. Angle 5, we're going bottom right up to top left. And I like this one a lot because a lot of the times people can't see this. I don't load up as much on the bottom as I would on the top. And as I do that, I get myself back to a familiar position. There's that puño strike again. So it's almost like a closing strike for me. And it's a very, very good follow-up. A lot of the times it's good deceiving strike. Some people can't see. You use this in sparring, you use this in application. It's a good cut. You can also use it to shift into an umbrella block. You can use it to help you shift offline with just the footwork. My favorite way of applying it is using, again, a tick strike. I have it here. I draw a little scoop here using my wrist flexors. And I follow that line, but instead of going just traditionally linear, I get a little bit more circular and almost compress it onto my closed position here. So that strike there, I like to target the hands. Very short range, but again, very deceiving. And I think it's good to have that extra trump card, if you will, so that when you use these big strikes, you can always change the range, you can always change the tempo of your strike without changing too much about your flow. So we have our angle 1s, we have our horizontal, we even have a with tick, or we have a reverse strike. Now, these next 2 are very, very important, in my opinion. Number 1 is, or rather number 4, is what we call a thrust. So we don't usually use the word stab unless we're thinking about a sword or edged weapon. When we think about stabbing, we're thinking about puncturing. So thrust, you can still use a thrusting motion whether it's impact or edged. So you can have a neutral thrust like this, and more so for us, we kind of do an upward thrust. That one's very hard to block. You can have your round thrust or round stab. You can have your reverse stab or your reverse thrust. And these are very, very good because now we deal with a little bit more distance and we break away from the slashes. You can often find yourself doing tepi-tepis. You can do, your sinawalis or carenzas, and it's one versus the other, but they tend to follow this kind of axis of all diagonal slashes or coming back to your body. When I thrust, the only time it comes back is when I hit my target. And so I can use that to break the pattern, and I can also use that to check the range. A lot of the times when people get lost in the sauce, people get lost here, they don't know how to adjust and try to cooperate or try to see how can I stop this thrust from coming in. So whether I'm on a low line here, whether I'm on a high line up here, it's a good bait as well, but you can use that to break the pattern like I said. And so number 5, last but not least, is an abanico strike. This is known as the fan strike. So you can have it up here, right to left. You can do it left to right. You can even do it a little bit more vertical. So an abanico to me is one of the first boutique strikes that I teach. It's good for baiting people out. So if I go to the right side and I create contact here, I can bounce to the left side very, very quickly. It has a good snapping effect, and also I can use it for counter or defensive purposes. I get that thrust coming in, that vertical abanico can whack it out of the way, and a lot of the times when you do that, you don't have to split it in half like I just did. You can use that kind of momentum where you load up your wrist, bounce back on the other side. You can play with angles and go from vertical to neutral or horizontal, and use one for countering, one for offense, or one for defense, one for offense. So I think that's super, super important. It gives you another edge, again, outside of the slashes, the traditional striking as we would call it. And then with this, you get a little bit more wrist flexor, very, very quick, very precise, and it creates that second dimension of baits and fakes and being able to work around your target like so. So very short list. I don't want to go too into it. If you guys have any other strikes that you feel should be in my top 5 or your top 5, please let me know in the comments below. Anastacio has basic premium elite access. We have online memberships so you guys can train with me as well as all the other students that are online with me. So definitely check that out. Link is in the description box. Give this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying this content, and please, please, please subscribe if you are new to this channel. And until next time, I'll catch you guys then.